Good evening. My name is Rene Roberts-Nijinsky, and I am a part-time instructor here at Cerritos College in the field of special education, particularly special education inclusion. And I was born 52 years ago with cerebral palsy. My parents were told at that time that I would never walk, talk, or be educated. But clearly, the doctors were wrong. And my journey towards inclusive education began at the age of 3. You see, I rode a bus to a school for the orthopedically handicapped. And I have to tell you, I hated that school. I really didn't like being surrounded by children with disabilities. And it wasn't because I didn't like them, it wasn't because they weren't nice kids, but it was because even at 3 years old, I didn't identify with them. You see, in the mirror of my own mind, I never see myself as someone who is disabled. And so I was at that school for the orthopedically handicapped, and every day I got off that bus and I told the principal that I hated it there. I told her that I wanted to go to the big school. What I know now is that that was my language as a 3- and 4-year-old, for I wanted to be included. So when I went to kindergarten, the kindergarten around the corner, when the children went on the field trip, I didn't get to go. They said, you know, you walk too slow and you can't keep up, and so you got to stay behind. So I stayed behind. We wouldn't do that now, but we did that then. When the teacher every day in kindergarten said, okay, boys and girls, sit crisscross applesauce, well, clearly I couldn't do that. But now, so I felt further excluded in kindergarten. I sat on the very corner of the carpet at the back of the room because at least then my legs that couldn't crisscross didn't get in the way of other people. Well, then I went to 1st grade Catholic school. Well, of course you would think in Catholic school the priests and the nuns, they're going to be inclusive, right? No, not so much. So my mom had to go to the Monsignor of the church and fight for me to attend the regular Catholic school with my siblings. The teacher, the 1st grade teacher, fought the Monsignor and didn't want me in her classroom because even though I was completely grade level, she didn't want to deal with me. So for months, I sat on the bench outside the door. The door was open, but I didn't go inside. So I could hear the lessons, but I wasn't included. Clearly, at that time, the laws that support inclusion and the rights of the disabled were not in effect. At that time, I was young, but I never saw myself in the mirror of my own mind as a disabled person. See, I never now still see myself as someone who is crippled, someone who walks with a limp, someone who uses a wheelchair, which I sometimes do. Disability doesn't occur to me. When I walk by a mirror or a window and I see what I really move like, I am shocked and surprised every single time. Because here, in the mirror of my mind, that's not who I see. When I went to high school, I went to Lakewood High School, local here, and I got the schedule and it said APE. I didn't know what that was. So I show up to this class and all the kids are disabled and I am freaked out. And I went to the payphone because I'm 52. We didn't have cell phones then, right? So I went to the payphone, I called my mom, I'm freaking out. Mom, I can't be in this class. I can't be in here. She said, you know what, kid? You got to handle it. So I went to the counselor's office. I told the counselor, you know, come on, I just want to be in a regular PE class. And he said, no, you can't do that because you're a liability. I said, well, shoot, I saw the modern dance people. They wear black and jump around. I could do that. Badminton, I could do that. Put me in a regular PE class. He said, no, sorry. He said, oh, and by the way, if you don't have a PE class, you can't graduate from high school. Great. Luckily for me, though, the boys' water polo and swim coach got a hold of my story. Now, who knew? But a bunch of boys, a bunch of teenage boys in Speedos, part of my path toward inclusiveness. I was all over it. It's all good, right? So high school, I'm in high school, I'm standing outside a classroom door, much like we have here, and one of the teachers stuck her head out, and she said, "Man, you have a voice." My mom said that all the time. And I was like, okay. She said, you know what? I think you should take a speech class. I'll train you. I'll train you to be a speaker. And I went into her class, and you know what? She believed in me. She trained me. And you know what? I left high school feeling like inclusion was possible, feeling like I could be somebody. I could do something. So I left high school, and I enrolled at Cal State Long Beach with a major in speech communication. Now, when I got to Cal State Long Beach, I was broke. And the way that I could get an education was to register as a disabled student. I hated that. I just wanted to be a college student, but I was broke. So ironically, I had to prove that I was not too disabled to go to college, but disabled enough to get the money. I did it because I wanted to go to college. And when I was at Cal State Long Beach, it's when I realized that having an education was going to be my ticket. Being educated was going to give me an opportunity at inclusion that I didn't have in any other place. And so at that time, I decided that I should become a teacher. I wanted to make a difference for kids that, like the difference that had been made for me. But you know what? Everybody said, you should be a special ed teacher. You should work with special needs kids. I pushed against that. I resisted that because what that said to me was, well, you know, it's almost like, well, you're a woman. You should work with women. Or, well, you're Hispanic, you should work with Hispanics. I felt like that. I felt like, oh, you're disabled, so you should work with those disabled kids. Eventually, though, I figured out that as a successful, educated, disabled woman, that I had a voice for disabled kids that other people didn't have. So at that time, I pursued my master's and my special ed credential. It's that master's in early childhood inclusion that eventually brought me here to Cerritos College. Because here at Cerritos, we believe that preschoolers, even preschoolers, should be fully included. It was that education and that understanding of working with kids with special needs that told me that our education system, as it currently is broken. Right now, we educate special needs kids over here, typical kids over here. We still train special educators and general educators separately. Many teachers in 2017 are terrified to have students with disabilities in their classrooms. They're terrified because they feel like untrained, or they're already overworked, or sadly because still teachers in 2017 are judged by their student test scores. So if we have students in general classes with disabilities, teachers are afraid of that. But special educators are also afraid. Why? Because if you're a special educator and you have students with special needs and you put them in a regular classroom, they might fail. If we blended our education system, if we said, we're not train teachers separately anymore, we're going to look and we're going to say that every classroom in America, whether it be elementary school or middle school or high school or even here at Cerritos College, every classroom has students with disabilities in it. And we do not teachers. So if we continue this separateness, some students may fail. We know now that parents will not ask for inclusive education because they either don't know the law, they don't know the language, or because school administrators and principals and leaders of school districts tell them that unless your child with special needs can perform at the same level as their typically developing peers, they cannot be included. This is not only not true, it is not the law. We see it everywhere. Our president recoils in fear at the presence of disability. Our society recoils in fear at the presence of disability. You see, I never get up, look in the mirror, and see a disabled person. I get up every day, I take a shower, put on my makeup, I get dressed like a teacher, even when I don't want to, and I go to work just like everybody else. Forget every day that I have a disability. But you know what reminds me? People recoil. People back away. People stare. Because, why? Because they continue to be afraid. See, change of our education system makes people afraid. Disability, unfortunately, in 2017, still makes people afraid. And if we were to have an inclusive education system, people will be afraid. This fear holds us back, okay? It doesn't allow us to have the power and the passion and the diversity of education that we could have. And the only thing we need to do is we need to train teachers to work with kids with special needs. Because a well-trained teacher doesn't matter the child. A well-trained teacher is a good teacher, and they can reach any child with any disability, with any limitation, if we allow it. During the day, I teach fourth graders, and I try to model for my students inclusiveness every day. And I asked my fourth graders, they're excited, it's a TED Talk, what are you going to tell them? So I said, boys and girls, I'm going to talk about inclusiveness and how important it is. And in my classroom of 34 students, right now 11 of them have various levels of disability. And so I asked them, boys and girls, what do you think I should say about inclusiveness? And you know what they said to me? They said, tell them we are not afraid of one another. You tell those people that disability doesn't scare us. Tell them that we know that we can do anything we put our mind to because you say so and because we say so. And it is because of these young people, these wonderful young people, that I know that an inclusive system, an inclusive education, and an society is not only powerful, it's possible today and going. Thank you.